We've got Joe Maring with us, so we also have Michaela Leah. Joe is going to share out his screen here and get our PowerPoint started in just a sec, but we'll tee this up for all. Many of you have been to our monthly web sessions. We do educational sessions every month here at CDW that are tied to ServiceNow, driving more ROI out of it, but it's always educational. And often, as with the topics are, like this, ServiceNow is featured, but it's really about workflow and process and best practices. The technologies that we use to support this, they really become secondary to the dialogue, secondary to the discussion. And with that, today I'm going to go ahead and set the table. This one is about maturing your security operations. And we say with ServiceNow, but especially in the beginning, what we're going to be talking about has a lot less to do with ServiceNow and a lot more to do with process and maturity and things of that nature. Again, excited to be here, and it's all about security. So Joe Maring's going to talk about, he's a technical architect here with us at CDW. He'll talk about some things from the aspect of platform technology, but we're going to lead off with Michaela Leah. And this is why I'm excited to be here at CDW. I joined CDW 3 years ago when our ServiceNow practice that used to be called Aptris was acquired. And I've helped build the ServiceNow practice here at CDW. And what I love about being here, quite honestly, is no matter what we're doing with ServiceNow, we can reach across to thousands of coworkers here at CDW that are experts in all of the topic areas that we work in. And today, that is Michaela. So Michaela, I'll introduce you. If you can share a little bit about your role here in the organization, and we'll get you on point with your part of the session today.
Sure. So nice to meet you, everyone. I am Michaela Lee, and I am your Principal Solution Architect for our Security Assessment team. Been here for 8 years in this position, and my team only handles security assessments.
Perfect. And on the agenda today, we're going to talk about the challenges. Michaela's going to take us through that. Then we'll pass the baton over to Joe. But why don't we get going, Michaela, and look forward to you kind of teeing up some of the industry challenges we're seeing with our clients and some of the ways that we're helping to approach those with them.
Perfect. So, I think one of the biggest things on all of our minds is data breaches and the constantly changing footprint within our infrastructure. How do different departments work together, all the way up to what software, who has access to what and why. And so one of the things that my team does is real-time incident response and forensics. So I was asked to come in and speak to you guys about some of the biggest areas where we see issues as far as incident response. And when we get called in, what are some of the things that are top of mind? Unfortunately, a lot of it is not like new. It's nothing like the movie Hackers, where it's like, oh, I got to the God server. Generally, it's usually something about an end user clicks on something, a misconfiguration, that type of thing. So you can do the next slide. So I just wanted to bring up, some information. According to Blumera and IBM, the average breach lifecycle is 287 days. So that has actually increased. It was 167 days at one point. It's 212 days till we initially detect that there's even something going on in our network. I attribute this to a lot of panes of glass sometimes. A lot of the time we know about something, or we have alerts about something that's going on. But unfortunately, having several different panes of glass to look at makes it very hard for us to not miss something. It's kind of like at my house. I have cameras everywhere, weird places like trees all around my house. And if all of those cameras were on a different network, and so someone enters my front yard and I see it on one camera, but then I don't know where they went. So I have to look at another system to see if they went to the side yard, and then another system to see if they went the other way, another system to see if they were in the back. So that is what I see in a lot of organizations where we have some great tools, we have some great technologies, but we don't have that implementation that we need. Generally, it's around 75 days to actually contain something within our network, come back up. 1 in 3 breaches are due to known but unpatched vulnerabilities. And I hate to keep bringing up this same example, but it's still relevant today. Target. And who wants to be the one that's getting talked about 7 years after it happened? But that was a known vulnerability. They knew about it. They were notified about it. They weren't able to get it patched in time. And there was one of the largest breaches that we've dealt with. So the top 5 weaknesses that I correlated with my team that we're seeing is misconfigurations of tools. And that goes down to user error, right? If we don't have tools configured properly, then we have that human element. Too many permissions. Why does a receptionist have admin access or access to other parts of the network where they're never going to need to have that? Or someone in PR have access to development or to manufacturing or so forth. It's too widespread. We don't have our permissions, locked down. Malware is always going to be up there. Weaker stolen credentials. That's so easy to do. I can go to any website on the dark web and generally find people's credentials because people use the same password for everything. And then lack of asset management, not knowing what's on your network, not knowing where it lives on your network, and not knowing what to do when you're adding new technologies to the network.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Michaela and John. I'm still experiencing some technical difficulties, so I know everyone else can see what you're sharing. Unfortunately, I cannot, but I've got the PowerPoint on my side, so we're gonna follow along together here in the background. So we can go ahead and advance to the next slide here, and I will start talking about the security incident response maturity model.
We're there.
All right, fantastic. So, as Michaela stated, right, there's a lot of known issues. There's a lot of challenges and things that have been faced by, IT organizations and security organizations for a long time. And unfortunately, many of those issues are not, really changing. We have new tools, new technologies available to us, but ultimately, sort of the foundational elements are still plaguing us. And so what we want to do now is sort of set the stage in terms of how we think about security operations within our organization. And, what we have here is sort of the classic 4-stage maturity model. So, down on the left there, manual operations, right? This is where a lot of organizations are today, frankly. They're using spreadsheets. They have limited visibility, multi-panes of glass. They've got many different individual point solutions. Some of them are integrated, some of them are not. And they exist, in different spheres of influence in the organization. It makes it difficult to really have quick and effective response times when something is detected or somebody becomes aware of something. As we move up in the maturity model, right, we're starting to get towards, automated incident creation, automated prioritization and assignment, a single system of record. This one's really key, right? We talk about that single pane of glass. We really need to have a central place where everything is pulled together from all of these different systems, right? These point solutions are getting better every day, but they're still point solutions. They're out there and they exist. They can't exist in a vacuum if you want to really be successful in the long run. These basic operations, getting the single system record, it really is about improving our visibility, right? Improving our understanding of what's out there in the environment. As we move further up the maturity model, right, then we can start to automate things. We can use threat intelligence tools. We can do automated incident enrichment, so we can present better information to the security analyst to make their job easier. We can really increase our response effectiveness, decreasing our response time, and we can make better decisions because we've got more information at our fingertips. We're not swivel chairing between 8 different systems trying to track what's going on. And then lastly, we get to that orchestrated remediation. So this is where we've got, really detailed playbooks for how we're going to handle, critical incident scenarios. We've got automated responses. We've got continual process improvement in place, and we're really focused on enhancing the analyst efficiency, right? So we're really trying to make our organization efficient. So I want you to keep this maturity model in mind, right, as we start to advance through this presentation and talk more about some of the capabilities of ServiceNow security operations, right? Think about where your organization is today and some of the capabilities that we're talking about and how you can start to take those process and technology challenges that you're facing today and start to leverage ServiceNow to improve that. So John, would go ahead and advance the next slide here.
Yep.
All right, so now we're going to talk about a single pane of glass for your security incident response. So within ServiceNow security incident response, we can advance again there, John. we sort of have a blueprint for how ServiceNow security incident response can play a key role in your organization. The first thing I want to highlight here, number one, right? Integrate your security products. So ServiceNow Security Operations is not meant to replace your existing technology suite, right? It's not meant to replace any given endpoint solution. It's not meant to replace your SIM. It really is meant to be that single pane of glass. So you can take all of those different solutions you have across the organization and feed them into a centralized place and start to standardize where all that information is being gathered. Once it's in, we can start prioritizing and evaluating those security incidents within the security incident response module. We'll talk a little bit more about some of that capability in a bit. Then we can utilize threat intelligence, right? Many organizations are already leveraging certain threat intelligence tools and platforms, but what often happens is something comes up and an individual, a security analyst, needs to take details of that security incident, feed it into that threat intelligence platform, wait for the response and the output of that, and then determine what they want to do, right? So they're still swivel chairing between different solutions to try to determine the best actions. Within ServiceNow, we can integrate all of these different products and sort of streamline that. So we've got all of those things centralized within security operations. We can get that information right in front of the security analyst right away. We can determine the best response action for that analyst and help them make informed decisions. And then ultimately, right, we can remediate threats faster, and we can then go on to doing detailed analysis and that continuous improvement. All right, so go ahead and advance one more. So one of the things that I want to highlight is with ServiceNow Security Operations, there are a ton of certified applications, right? The logos you're seeing up here just represent a fraction of the capabilities that are out there, but there's over 100 certified ServiceNow Store apps for integrating to different security solutions and point solutions that you might have with very specific purposes, right? So we've got things like CrowdStrike for EDR, we've got Okta for authentication, Zscaler for device management. Right, there's all kinds of different things that are out there that organizations are leveraging today, in many cases independent of each other, right? A bunch of point solutions, but we can pull all of those into one centralized place within ServiceNow.
Yeah, and Joe, if I can just add here, this is a great point to pause and talk about the different aspects of security. So at CDW, we've got teams here, like Michaela's team, that really are product neutral, and they're basically going to talk with our clients and work with them on strategies and roadmaps and future proofing. Then we have folks here that are product specialists, right? And if a customer has Okta or Splunk or any of the things here and dozens, if not hundreds of more, we generally have experts here that can help manage or implement those solutions. And those are point solutions for a particular aspect, right, of something that will come in an overarching mode to part of our security program, right? And now as we're talking with Joe some more here about how ServiceNow can pull all this together, we're able to look at all the different pieces of it. So you've got the people and process side, you've got the technology side, and then what we're going to see next is Joe's going to walk us through pulling that all together, that single pane of glass that he talked about, and the power that can give us.
Awesome. So we can go ahead and go to the Runbook slide.
We're there.
All right. So one of the key elements in any SOC center or security operations team is really sort of detailing runbooks. Like, what are the things that we need to do? What are the activities that we need to perform regularly? Right. Sometimes these are in the form of Visios. Sometimes these are notes in a OneNote or a folder in a SharePoint drive that contains here's the steps you're supposed to follow or the things you're supposed to do. Within ServiceNow, we have the capability to centralize all of those runbooks and actually provide that contextual information directly on the security incident as it comes into the security analyst. And so what that means for your security analyst is they have less time that they need to spend searching for relevant information, right? These different aspects of the runbook can be tagged and associated directly to certain categories or certain types of incidents and allow that information to pop up, including next steps or a process that analyst needs to follow right in ServiceNow, right where they're looking at that ticket that's been generated. The other thing that this enables really is a consistent response from your security team. Right, when they don't have to go search and find different types of things, that for any given task or any type of incident, they're seeing the exact same information about how they should be processing that. And that's really fantastic because it starts to really drive consistency in terms of how you are responding to threats once they are identified. Now, most organizations have some form of a knowledge repository of these runbooks, right? And bringing that into ServiceNow really starts to lend itself to that maturity journey. And we'll talk about how bringing sort of that core process element and that knowledge that you already have in your organization into ServiceNow will start to drive that forward. So John, if we want to go ahead and advance to the next step. All right, so Playbooks. So this is where the workflow engine that is ServiceNow really comes into its own in the security space. So if you're familiar with ServiceNow, you might recognize what we're seeing here on the screen. This is Flow Designer, and within Flow Designer, within ServiceNow SecOps, we can create playbooks, and the playbooks are really an emulation of the process diagrams or the flow charts for security response that teams are already using, and we can build these playbooks step by step. Here is the activities, the tasks, if you will, that the analysts need to follow. And so when you build out these playbooks, you can take some of those steps, those key activities that you want to make sure are being performed every time on a given type of incident. And you can make sure that those are generating tasks that prompt the analyst correctly. And then those tasks and that incident, right, will also contain that knowledge, that runbook information that you already had created previously. It'll be associated directly to that. And so then what happens is when the analyst is assigned to a ticket, you can start to drive immediate response actions based off the playbook and the different steps that you want that analyst to perform. But beyond just creating tasks for that analyst, right? We talked about the capability of ServiceNow to integrate with so many different products and tools. We can actually take that one step further, and we can actually start to orchestrate and automate the response tasks that are happening there. So John, if you want to advance to the next slide, we can actually take different point solutions that can do key activities, right? So we can do threat lookups, we can do email search and delete, we can orchestrate your endpoint management solution, right? That your security analyst is probably logging into that solution independently to block a device from the network or to perform a reset on a device or lock it out. We can do block requests, we can reset user accounts. All of these activities that your security team is going to go do manually and separately in another system, we can take that same Flow Designer playbook that we just talked about, and we can start dropping in automated actions that leverage your existing tools. So John, if we want to advance one more slide here. So really, when we bring it all together, we've got a centralized process documentation, and we're going to take that and we're going to put that into runbooks. And this is sort of this, bringing this maturity journey together in terms of how we want to think about orchestrating our operations. We centralize that documentation that we already have in the environment. We build playbooks to start streamlining the response activities, right? And what you're doing here is you're really just formalizing the process. The process probably exists in a Visio diagram. Hey, this is how we handle this type of incident. We're formalizing that in a playbook. And so it's going to appear for the analyst each time. And then we can start orchestrating those playbook steps using our existing tools, right? And so it's a maturity journey, within the process of how we respond to these security incidents. And we can take, that 0 through 3 that you saw at the beginning, right? We can take those manual components, the disparate systems, we can start to hook them together into ServiceNow, and then slowly start advancing through this, right? And at the end of the day, then what we have is we have our process. It's defined, it's documented, we know how to execute it, it's repeatable, and we can orchestrate it using the tools. And the other great part here is as new security tools and platforms come out, right? New technologies, new ways of managing your IT infrastructure or your IT landscape, you can then just take that exact same process, playbook that you're already using and switch out, one technology for another. If you replace your endpoint management solution, you don't need to rewrite or rethink how your process is going to work. It's probably going to be the same process that your organization has been using. You're just going to be leveraging a different platform to execute that final step. And you can hook that right into ServiceNow and continue to leverage what you already know works and what has already been sort of a best practice for your organization using evolving tools over time. All right. Now we want to talk about Streamline Collaboration. So the other challenge that we see very, very frequently in organizations is I'm in spreadsheets, I'm in emails, I've found something and I've got to send it to another team. I don't have a great way to collaborate with them, right? Many organizations have, a complete separation between their security and their IT patching teams. They don't have a common tool set. It's constant manual effort, right? The vulnerability management team will send out, an Excel sheet of vulnerabilities. We see this all the time, to the server team. Here's your spreadsheet with 200,000 vulnerabilities that need to be patched in our infrastructure. It's very ineffective and it's very difficult to track. And it also starts to obfuscate some of the true risk that these vulnerabilities can pose, because a lot of them will start to sit out there for a long time and the cycles for remediating it and getting it closed out aren't well understood, either by IT or by the security team. So I want to advance one slide here. So with ServiceNow Vulnerability Response, which is part of ServiceNow Security Operations, just like we talked about before, we can integrate your vulnerability scanners, right? So we take those technologies that you already have in your environment that you're already using. Most organizations have some vulnerability scanning platform that they've implemented, and we integrate that into ServiceNow. We automatically prioritize the vulnerabilities, and I'll talk a little bit more in the next slide, in the next couple slides here, about how we can contextualize that information. But then we can also triage that information, automatically within ServiceNow, and we can coordinate change planning. And this is one of the really key things that is lacking in most organizations when it comes to this collaboration between IT and security. If you're using ServiceNow, more than likely your IT teams, your infrastructure teams, your server and desktop hardware teams are leveraging ServiceNow as part of their change management, right? As part of that patch management process. They've got to use ServiceNow, they've got to create change requests. Well, they're taking a spreadsheet that somebody gave them, and they're probably just attaching that spreadsheet to the change request, right? There's not a lot of context there. It's not really clear exactly what's happening. But within ServiceNow, when we bring this vulnerability data into ServiceNow, we can then coordinate how those changes are going to affect specific vulnerabilities. And we can then automatically confirm through the vulnerability scanning platform when those vulnerabilities have in fact been remediated, or maybe we thought they were remediated, but they're actually still open, right? It gives us end-to-end visibility there. Let's go ahead and advance to the next slide. So again, integration options for vulnerability response data. There's a ton of them out there. This is just sort of a subset of the integrations that are available. You'll see the big ones: Qualys, Tenable, Rapid7, and then we can do other things, including code scanning and things with Veracode. So there's a lot of tools and platforms that are out there that are being leveraged today, and ServiceNow can take all of those inputs again and help create sort of that centralized location for that data. All right, we can go on to the next one. So contextualizing your vulnerability data. So this is really, the heart of facilitating that collaboration between IT and security. So, when we talk about not having visibility to, what's really happening in the organization, not really understanding the true risk. We've got 500,000 vulnerabilities that our scanner picked up. What does that mean to us? What does that mean to the organization? What does that actually, mean in some terms of real risk? Well, by bringing that vulnerability data directly into ServiceNow, we can take the power of the ServiceNow CMDB and contextualize the risk to our organization that those vulnerabilities present. And so instead of just having, I've got the CMDB over here, and then I've got, my vulnerability scanner over here, we're really bringing them together to say, we've got these CIs here within ServiceNow. They're part of a critical business service. These are the servers, for example, that deliver, our most critical application to our end users. And we've got some really high severity vulnerabilities that are present on those. That helps you start to understand, where's the risk? Where do I need to put priority in terms of how we're going to get these resolved? The other thing that we get here is, instead of dumping, groups of spreadsheets, to a team, we can help them contextualize, what are the vulnerabilities? There may be, there might still be 200,000 vulnerabilities that the Windows Server team needs to work on remediating. But there's probably a subset of those that apply to more critical infrastructure. What are those, and how can we prioritize those better? That becomes much easier once all that vulnerability data is in ServiceNow and contextualized with the CMDB that you've already built out. And then obviously, right, once we have all of this data in ServiceNow, we're able to leverage some of the fantastic, workspaces to sort of drive how IT and the security team can collaborate. So Advancing the next slide here. So the workspaces for security and IT, this is another great feature, right? Instead of sending an email and having a spreadsheet and having to go back and forth and then not really know if it's remediated until you get another email a month later with a different spreadsheet, and then you've got to compare the deltas between the spreadsheets. The vulnerability management team within your organization can leverage the workspace here to look at things like, what are the vulnerabilities on external facing assets, right? What are the vulnerabilities that are on Windows servers or on Linux servers? And then they can create remediation efforts within ServiceNow that align directly to those teams and then make it really easy to track that progress. And so on the left side there, you can see there's remediation effort that's 50% complete, right? So not only have you identified the vulnerabilities in the environment, you've contextualized them to the IT organization, but as the IT organization is able to start patching those, the security team has a really clear understanding of how effective are we being in terms of actually getting this done, right? We're no longer just comparing spreadsheets. We're not going back and forth and losing things in emails, right? It's all contextualized within ServiceNow. All right, we can advance to the next slide here. So security operations and performance monitoring. So this is another element that is a huge challenge for many organizations today. And one of my favorite quotes, and that I love to use this all over the place: if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. And that comes from Lord Kelvin, a British mathematician. The Kelvin temperature measurement is based off of work that he did. So really, when we think about security, right, it's very difficult to measure how effective we are. When we have all of these different point solutions, we have all of these different tools that people are swivel chairing between. A lot of our work is happening in emails and spreadsheets, and so there's not sort of a centralized source of collaboration. It's really difficult to understand, how long are things taking? Are we meeting our targets? Many organizations have, incident response policies, and the only time that they'll really, really evaluate, whether they met their deadlines or not is when they have like a big breach or a very high severity issue, right? Then they'll review, okay, we didn't meet our timeline. But on the daily stuff, on everything that's happening throughout the organization all the time, it's very difficult to measure that. Same from a vulnerability response, standpoint. Many organizations have patching policies and targets that they want the teams to hit. But in terms of actually measuring the effectiveness, it's really a large challenge. So, if we can't measure it, we can't make it better. And so by bringing all of these different sources of data, right, all of these different point solutions that you already have in the environment into ServiceNow, it gives us the ability to leverage ServiceNow to contextualize that data and start measuring the data effectively. So from a security operations standpoint, we can get things like what are the remediation targets that we have? What's the mean time to resolution? Right, we have all of these dashboards and capabilities in ServiceNow that really allow us to drive towards how do we measure what we're doing today? And now that we're measuring it, what are those weak spots? What teams are taking a long time to patch things, right? What types of incidents are taking us too long to resolve? And instead of this only being something that's done once we do a formal, post-incident review on a very large breach, this is something that can happen all the time. And within ServiceNow too, we get comprehensive dashboards out of the box. So this is one thing that's really nice. When you pull in all of these different tools, you no longer have to, all right, what kind of report do I want to run? Go build it manually, right? All of the key metrics, all of the key things that you'll typically want to see, where are my tickets at? How many tickets are in progress? How long is it taking us to resolve these tickets? All of that stuff is already there out of the box. Now, of course, within the ServiceNow platform, you can build your own reports, you can build your own metrics, your own SLAs, you can add all of those things to meet your organization's specific needs. But a lot of it comes just right out of the box. And really the key is just getting that data in there, right? Going back to those integrations, bringing those integrations together into a centralized system so that you have that visibility and you can start to measure and improve your security operations. All right, so wrapping up here, three key things that I hope you can take away from this. Within, ServiceNow, you really can mature your security operations by helping identify your threats faster in a much more timely manner by having them centralized into a single pane of glass. You can streamline the coordination and collaboration between IT and security, right? We can get out of spreadsheets, we can get out of emails, and we can actually have, meaningful collaboration within a system of record that allows us to track what's happening, right? How are we doing? How are we performing? And then last, we can leverage real performance monitoring to then improve, right? We can measure it so we can improve. And we can do that both from a security incident response. How is our security analyst doing in terms of identifying and closing out threats or remediating breaches? And we can do it from a vulnerability management and a patching standpoint, right? How are we doing? How is the organization doing, right? 1 in 3 breaches come from known vulnerabilities, right? We want to know what those vulnerabilities are. We want to get them remediated, and we want to make sure we're remediating them in the time frame and the guidelines that our organization needs to follow.
Well, hey, thank you, Joe, and thanks for letting me be your PowerPoint guy today. That was exciting for me. I got to click.
Yeah, exciting
I
for
usually
both
get to
of
do
us.
nothing of value in these sessions. But I want to cycle back, and you know, you've given us a lot of content, and I'm looking at the 3 wrap-up items here, which are obviously important. And sometimes, right, things look a lot easier on paper or in a PowerPoint or in a 35, 40-minute session like we did today. So there's always, you know, well, where do we begin? Because this is a journey, and we use the title of this session included, you know, maturing your security operations. So Michaela, I know you're still out there, so feel free to jump in on this one. But for the folks on, you know, everyone is generally in a different place during this journey, right? But I think in general, we understand that getting all of the different business practices and business units out there agreeing and on the same page and contributing so we can have this single pane of glass, that doesn't happen overnight. So from a road mapping perspective, Michaela, anything you can share, the work that you do with clients that are looking to put more structure around this journey?
Sure. So I think the biggest thing is I always say, like, step back to the basics. You can't defend what you don't know, and unfortunately, we just don't know what we don't know. I also deal with a lot of organizations where HR doesn't talk to IT, and IT doesn't talk to security, and security will implement something without ever talking to IT, or vice versa. And so the communication. So figuring out if we're going to follow a framework, what that framework is going to be, and implementing those controls. So looking at a security maturity assessment, maybe once a year, every 2 years, based on NIST or CIS or whatever it is that the framework is that you're wanting or working towards, CMMC, PCI, ISO, the list goes on. But making sure that we have an outside party come in and check those controls and validate, right? It's one thing for me to say, yeah, my house is completely secure. Nobody could ever get into my house, no matter what they did. I have all these layers of protection. I've got man-eating dogs and crazy cows and some goats out there. But without having someone come in and actually check that, a third party that's unbiased, that doesn't have any meat in the game, I could be selling myself short. There could be an area that I'm not seeing, a hole in the fence somewhere that's very minute that not everybody can get through, but the right person could find that to get through, especially when I'm looking at applications or asset management, those types of things. I want to make sure that we have it documented, but that it's adopted across the board. So having someone come in and do like an interview basis and interviewing the different departments, maybe a lot of the times we'll find that sales, you know, when we start asking questions like, how do you share large files of information? Oh, we just use Dropbox. And that's great. We don't want to take that away, but maybe we implement something like a Box account or OneDrive account that's owned by IT. And then we have provisions set in place for anyone that uploads or downloads, you know, large files of information, IT gets an alert or security gets an alert, so that we're able to monitor these behaviors and make sure that someone can't, you know, steal the keys to the castle. But I think security maturity, assessment, penetration testing are definitely things getting back to the basics.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, and thanks so much for that, and thank you, Joe, as well for giving us that tour of what it can look like, the art of the possible, for bringing it all together. And for the folks out there, a couple quick things. We'll make sure that everybody gets a copy of today's session, and if you have questions, just reply to the invite that you have. We'll make sure those get answered. If you'd like more information or want to speak with somebody here, if it's more strategic and things like the roadmap and future proofing and strategy, you know, Michaela's happy to find some time to chat with you and talk more about that. If it's more product based around ServiceNow, we've got folks that can do that as well. So I can be your point for that. Again, if you reply to the invite, Any additional information you need, we're here for you. We're CDW. You're a customer of ours or a potential customer of ours. We appreciate your time and interest in the investment you make. Also, keep an eye open. We're doing these monthly. And if you have any topics that you'd like covered in Q1, we've got some openings there. Would love to hear what you'd be interested in learning more about. And as always, exciting to collaborate with our customers. So thanks so much.
John, will you be getting back to Rich Smith? He did have a question about the different modules and security operations, that type of thing. So will you make a note to send him out an email after this?
Yeah, absolutely will. And yeah, because I was sharing my screen out, I wasn't able to kind of monitor the QA thing. But yes, if you ask the question in chat, you can count on a response, and we'll make sure we'll get information to you quickly. Thank you again, everybody. Really appreciate the time, and we'll follow up. And we're here if you have any questions. Thank you, and have a great day.